game's over.
Welcome into Triple Zeros. I'm Josh Buckhalter. Follow me on Twitter at JoshGBuck. Hit up the Facebook page, Clocker Sports, website, clockersports.com, email address, clockersports@gmail.com, and of course, you can always contact the podcast at 30spod. That's 30spod on Facebook and Twitter. The number 30 and pod. Got a jam-packed show. We got to talk about Kyrie Irving and him throwing off the feng shui, the aura of the Brooklyn Nets. We got to talk about Kevin Porter getting shipped out west, southwest actually. But before we get into any of that, we got to get into the big weekend coming up in the NFL Championship Sunday, Conference Championship weekend. You already know what it is, man. This is probably the best weekend in the entire playoff system as far as I'm concerned. A lot of people like divisional. The Super Bowl tends to be a letdown. Now, we've had some good ones. We've had a really strong run. I'm not even going to lie to you. But, like, this one right here is usually where you get the teams that are really familiar with each other. Obviously, these are the best two from each conference. And so this is usually a weekend where you see some fireworks, and hopefully we get to see that this week. The early game should have some. You got Green Bay taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They are actually hosting the Buccaneers in Lambeau, and I think that could play a major factor, and we'll talk about it in a second because there's some other numbers that will lead you in the other direction. First of all, Tampa Bay won 38-10 back in Week 6. That game, though, was in Tampa. You also have the fact that Aaron Rodgers is 1-3 in conference championship games, 63% completion, but only 6 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. Tom Brady, 9-4, 62% himself, 18-14. So it's really not as bad as you might think. Now, I'm not saying they're equal, right? Brady clearly has the plus in his ratio, and it's a little bit better anyway. The point is, though, is that it's not like he's lighting it up. The problem is that Rodgers has played bad. Now, here's where it gets a little bit of a turn. And one more thing, I would also say that the funnel offense that Green Bay has at times, where it's all Devontae Adams and all Aaron Jones. Now, we've seen more of Marquez Valdes-Scantling and Alan Lazard. Robert Tonyan gets involved. You know Jamal Wood. But will they keep those guys involved? Can those guys keep themselves involved enough to not let the very talented Buccaneers defense take away Devontae Adams and completely shut down that offense? Rodgers' legs are going to come into play. Aaron Jones is going to come into play, and I heard a reporter from up in Green Bay today on the radio complaining about how last time they played, Green Bay stopped running the ball, so they need to commit to maintaining that kind of a presence on the ground. The other thing, though, and this is where it starts to swing back, this cold. Now, I know you could look at the quarterback in Tampa, Tom Brady. You could look at Chris Godwin, who went to Penn State. You can look at Antonio Brown, who played in Pittsburgh. And you can say that all these guys are prepared, as most NFL players should be, but these guys in particular are prepared for a cold weather game. I will tell you, as somebody who lives in the Chicagoland area, that when you get to this area, when you are in this region, it's a different type of cold. Now, there's only going to be about 7 miles per hour wind in this game. It's going to be less than 30. The high is 29 degrees. Low is in the 21. 7 mile per hour gusts don't sound like much, but when they get in and they're whipping right through you, it's like knives. And these guys are going to be perspiring, they're going to be sweating, they're going to get cold. And you've heard Keyshawn Johnson, you've heard many NFL players talk about how playing in the snow is fun. Playing in the cold is not fun. When it's freezing cold, that's well below freezing, and I think could end up being an issue ultimately. Now, again, you've got guys who are used to playing in cold. Now, if anybody's not affected, I would say you can probably count the most on Brown and Brady, right? Godwin maybe too, but I would put my money, if it's going in order, it's Brady, Brown, and then Godwin somewhere in third. But that's about where Gronk, you trust Gronk. You got to trust Gronk. So, I mean, that's where I see the pass front office. But if anything is going to be an issue, it's going to be that brutal cold where it's painfully cold, where it hurts. Like, this is not playing in the snow. This ain't the Tuck Rule game. This isn't what people normally think of when they think of cold. Just telling you as somebody who's in the Midwest. My prediction, though, I do think that the Bucks will ultimately come out on top. There's too much there. And while the cold would normally get most teams, I'm not certain that it's enough to take away this Tampa Bay offense with, again, still having Gronk, Brown, and Godwin, who have played in cold weather. Similar weather. It's definitely not as cold, but it's similar weather. The other game, the late game, as they rotate, this is not a better or worse thing. This is actually just a rotation thing. But this will be the Buffalo Bills in Arrowhead taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, here's the thing. Patrick Mahomes is starting. If you've been following, he's had the concussion. That's not really concussion. It's a nerve thing, whatever they're trying to spin it as. Also has a foot/toe thing that they're not really being clear upon either, or clear about either. So you're not sure exactly what's going on there. But Patrick Mahomes is starting. And I say that because you've seen, the total for this game rise. You've seen the spread increase, but you've also seen Patrick Mahomes take the reps in quote-unquote practice. Now, the first one was a virtual practice, very limited in scope, but that's what he did. He was able to do everything that they did. So they listed him as full, but when people started parsing away what happened in that practice, they broke it down to limited. He's starting. There's no way he's not playing. That being said, we got to go into who's going to get it. He's still limping on that foot. Kansas City won back in Week 6. Week 6 remix on this one. In this conference championship week. 26-17 over Buffalo. That game was in Buffalo. You got the Chiefs, who are sitting 6 in points. They are first in yards. Meanwhile, Buffalo is second in points and yards. And here's where it gets kind of funky, because coming into the season, you would have bet that the Buffalo Bills had the better defense, while the Chiefs were getting by with what they could do. Well, the Chiefs actually have the 10th ranked scoring defense, while Buffalo sits at 16th. So, while Buffalo's going to be able to put up some points, when you get into the red zone, and there could be some critical moments where you see the Chiefs make some key stops that while Buffalo can make them, clearly the numbers bear out that the Chiefs have made them more regularly than the Bills have. So, I want to go with Buffalo. I really do. But I feel like Andy Reid will be able to keep up. And if Mahomes starts, how about this? I'll qualify it this way. If Mahomes starts, I'm going Chiefs. And I think he's starting. If he doesn't, obviously you have to go with the Bills. But I think we get a Chiefs-Bucks Super Bowl. I think the league wants a Chiefs-Packers Super Bowl that they didn't get a couple years ago or a year ago. But we'll see what happens. But I think it's going to be Tampa Bay and Kansas City. And to be honest, that's kind of what you want. There's not a bad matchup in this. Maybe some less hypeable ones. You know, Josh Allen's a draw, but Buffalo's not really a sexy team. You could spin Tampa Bay. Green Bay is not, whatever. It's Green Bay, whatever. Bears fan here. That's Green Bay, whatever. But Aaron Rodgers sells. So you're selling quarterbacks here, and there's not a bad quarterback matchup in any of this. Still, I gotta go. Tampa Bay, Kansas City. That's gonna be my early call right now, and I reserve the right to change my mind last second, even mid game, if I so choose. We have more coaching hires around the NFL. Arthur Smith, formerly the Tennessee Titans offensive coordinator, left to join the Atlanta Falcons. The Titans were 4th in points and 2nd in yards last season, and they had an incredible run game. Now, I know he wants that part of the hiring is based on what he did in the ground game there in Tennessee, but they did have one Derrick Henry, and those kind of guys aren't necessarily just growing on trees. You don't find too many 6'3" running backs who can still move like wide receivers in the open field. So good luck. That's a good job. Roster situation's not great. We'll see what they do with it, but I get where they're going. We'll see if it translates. Again, I think that there might be banking on some of the talent that he's not bringing with, and that could be tricky. But an offseason can change a lot of perspectives, so we'll see what they do. I like the hire in terms of for him, and clearly they saw a flaw in what they were doing last season, that abysmal campaign that they had where they were blowing leads left and right, and went out and tried to go out. We talked about this an episode or so ago where in the Robert Saleh, actually last time we met, the Robert Saleh hiring in New York, how he's just the polar opposite of Adam Gase. This is a similar situation here in Arthur Smith where you know he's going to be dedicated to the run regardless, something that Dan Quinn was obviously charged with abandoning far too often. You had the Detroit Lions hiring Dan Campbell, the assistant head coach and tight ends coach for the New Orleans Saints. Now, many are up in an uproar for multiple reasons. First of all, Campbell, who I just told you, assistant head coach / tight ends coach, people are complaining that he got hired over an Eric Bieniemy who has the title of coordinator, while Campbell has never held that title. My problem with that argument is that Campbell has filled in as a head coach for 12 games already with the Miami Dolphins a few years back. But on top of that, he has the title of assistant head coach. So while I understand what people are, Bieniemy deserves a shot, I'm not sure that, trying to take a stab at Campbell's resume is necessarily the route to go about it. Now, on top of that, people are a little bit ruffled by a fiery portion of his hour-plus opening press conference in which he talked about biting kneecaps and taking chunks out, and you got to knock us down 4 and 5 times because the team has been kicked and it's not happening no more, and he was cussing. it was like 5 seconds in, he cussed and had to apologize for cussing. It was great. I can only imagine how that interview went between he and Andre Holmes, or that's not his name, Mr. Holmes, the GM for the Detroit Lions. But we're stuck on that. He also went on though to talk about what he was looking for in coordinators, and he specified offense, and he talked about in particular DeAndre Swift and mentioned motioning him out of the backfield, getting him into the slot, not being completely committed to one style of formation or one scheme per se. And it started off sounding like he didn't have one, but he wrapped it up in a bow and made you really understand that he wasn't trying to be pigeonholed that way. And in many ways, he's talked in much of the sense that people thought that the ownership at least thought they were getting in Matt Patricia when he was hired a few years back. So hopefully this works out for them. I know everybody's kind of dunking on him for that 60-second or whatever clip that he just went off on some wild stuff. But there was some good stuff in there as well. He hired Aaron Glenn to be his defensive coordinator, former NFL cornerback for the Jets and the Texans. So that's a positive as well. You just have to wonder, again, are the Lions doing what the Falcons did and going a little bit too far, trying to get the opposite of what they just had, because they hired a guy who wasn't being talked about, despite his role with New Orleans. You just didn't hear his name generating much buzzing. Again, his role in as a head coach was more than 5 years ago, something along. It was a while back. This isn't 2-3 years ago now. You just gotta wonder, trying to go oppo, that can get you burned. You also had, and this is a case of going back to what you know. The Philadelphia Eagles, who parted ways with Doug Peterson, have hired Nick Sirianni, the offensive coordinator from the Indianapolis Colts, to be his replacement. Sirianni was Frank Reich's right-hand man out in Indianapolis. The Colts came in 9th in points and 10th in yards last season. Phillip Rivers had I don't want to say bounce back, but he maintains a pretty good year, found his rhythm midway through, and they worked it out. The Colts have been, I think, top 10 in scoring two out of the last 3 years as well. Sirianni comes in highly regarded, and again, this is a connection that they are familiar with that Reich, that kind of Reich mind meld. They're trying to bring that magic back, because I talked about this with Carson Wentz. If Reich was really the guy who got Wentz to go where he was going, and Dougie P was, CEOing it up, and his CEOing skills aren't necessarily up to par. He kind of lucked out the first time. This time around, it got him canned. But now, somebody off of that tree, is this the Doug Peterson tree? Does this count as a Doug Peterson tree? Did they hire a Doug Peterson disciple in essence? I mean, I know not really, because I'm not sure if he even worked with him in Philly. I know he was worked with Reich in Los Angeles / San Diego with the Chargers. We'll put it that way. I'm not even sure where they were, what city they were in at that point in time. It's an off the radar hire again, but this one is one with connections to a familiar face. and a face that brought them much success. Their most success that they've had in ever. So I get this one a little bit more than the first two. Definitely more than the Lions one, but it's the Lions, and if that's gonna be, I actually liked what he said. There typically is a reason why candidates aren't the hot names, though. So we'll see what happens. And now, to be fair, Frank Reich wasn't the first choice of the Colts. We'll see. What's going to happen up in Houston? Is that where Eric Bieniemy is going to land? If you saw the clip of Bieniemy that was being, juxtaposed against Campbell's rant, Bieniemy just put it back on the focus on the team in this week and trying to go and get a W. But I think about this: the longer this drama with Deshaun Watson plays out, the longer the head coaching hold exists there in Houston, the better, the more this bodes well for Houston. First of all, lingering drama for Watson is not good right now. It's not good PR. There's no such thing as bad PR. It's just not good PR. It's PR, though. But it's nothing happening right now. They're not pulling trigger on any deals right now. The asking price is up. I think the consensus is like 3 first-round picks to start the conversation. So he's not moving anywhere right now. They don't have to. He just signed a contract. He supposedly is not upset with the contract. And so you have to just think about the fact that, well, if they're not going to move him now, they're not probably going to move him. And the longer he stays, the longer they have to smooth things over, to get his input on the coach. And again, if they bring in Bieniemy, it's all good. And you've heard the reports. He's rumored to be done, and the Jets and the Dolphins are on the phone, and the Bears are rumored to be put. Blah 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 blah. Point is, the longer he sits there, the better chance it is that he stays in Houston. Now, it's already a really good chance because they don't got to move him. Franchise quarterbacks are tough to come by. Trust me, I know this. And so the longer this plays out, the better I would feel if I was a Houston fan. Staying in the AFC South, A.J. Brown of the Tennessee Titans reportedly had surgery on both knees. Not one, both of them. Dexter Laboratories meme. They said he put out a lengthy post on social media. I'll summarize. He just said that they told him that he would be done in week 2 and that he wouldn't play for the rest of the season. He went on to make the Pro Bowl. 2 knees. You only get 2. I don't know if you know that. I mean, just trying to make sure that we're clear here on exactly what was going on. A.J. Brown is a stud of a receiver. Farewell to Mark Ingram. He got jerseys with personalized messages from all of his teammates after his release from the Baltimore Ravens. I talked about this a few weeks back when they had held him out, his first active scratch, and I was like, this is it. I've long been a fan of his. I'm not sure if he could still produce on the level that he was, not even the entire time with the Saints, but when he first got to Baltimore. I definitely think he has a role, though, especially as a mentor and a great, great teammate. That was my favorite quality of his, was that he was always up in the room, the running back room. He was always hyping up Alvin Kamara, the guy who was destined to take his job. He's always hyping up the Lamar Jackson. He wasn't taking his job, but I mean, he kind of is. Lamar was running more than any running back in that team. So Mark Ingram, class act guy, and apparently his teammates think so too. Hope to see him stick around, but you know how they do running backs in the NFL. 2 guys that it is officially a farewell for, though, Drew Brees and Phillip Rivers. These 2 dudes have been balling for a combined 37 years. That's a long-ass time, okay? I don't know if you know that either. That goes along with the 2 knees thing, that 37 years is a long time to play professional sports. Let's put it that way. It's not a long time on its own in normal walks of life, but to do what they have done, I think, is completely remarkable. And both have had some pretty profound things happen since then. You had Phillip Rivers put that nice statement out where he kind of talked about how he thought he was still right, dadgummit. Like literally typed out dadgummit. Talked about he enjoyed the trash talk with opponents, and we know that he's one of the game's most notorious trash talkers. 7 kids, and when he got to the part about listening to his kids, my fan, like that, he was listing the starting lineups for like 2 teams at that point in time. So a nice heartfelt message from him. And then Drew Brees, his wife, put out a post talking about he played with various injuries throughout the season, including a torn rotator cuff. Breeze had the slight hiccup, if you will, of stepping into a political conversation that I think at that point probably could have just been best left alone. Some things don't have to be addressed. Not everything needs to be addressed, but he addressed it, and it didn't go well. So it didn't necessarily work out for him in that regard. And rumors are that it kind of fractured the locker room a bit too. We'll see if that's the case. I don't think that's really how it goes. That stuff seems kind of irrelevant. If you think about how it really is in day-to-day life, I think that it's just as irrelevant in the locker room, especially because they're going there anyway for a common goal. But you're looking at, what, 992, I think, total touchdowns, 990-something, damn near 10,000 touchdowns, or damn near 1,000 touchdowns between the two of these dudes. Just slinging the pill, two of the most prolific passers, both former Chargers. Breeze eschewed by the Chargers in favor of Rivers after his rotator cuff or his shoulder injury, that they said that he would never play again before being reclamated down in New Orleans. And then Rivers played just the 1 year down in Indy, struggled a little bit to start, found his footing, like I said, and then put on a hell of a show for the rest of the way, talking trash the whole time. And while he didn't have the career that Breeze had, he didn't get a Super Bowl. This might be a situation where, looking back, like, you could talk about Breeze has all the counting stats, but he threw all the time and always had one system with, you might not want to call them great weapons, but I think it was a consistently solid. I don't know, because Rivers' big issue was turnovers from a lot of his career. These are two Hall of Famers. That's where I'm getting a long, winding road to end up at the fact that these are both Hall of Famers, despite the fact they got there in vastly different ways throughout their career. Breeze, the conservative dink and dunker. Phillip Rivers, the gunslinging, take your chances down the field kind of guy. The game is going to miss both of them. Bruce Arians is a real one, and I have to give shouts out to a real one. In case you didn't know, Bruce Arians has not one, but two black coordinators in Byron Leftwich and Todd Bowles, former head coach of the New York Jets. Now, Bowles was rumored to be a candidate for several of the head coaching spots, but those are filled up. But not only does he have those two as his coordinators, he also has several assistant staffers and quality control staff members, including former players Antoine Randall L. and Larry Foote, formerly of the Steelers. Bruce Arians is putting on for a game made majority of black players, and has those faces in the coaching staff, and I'm sure it helps with communication in relation to the rest of the team. Byron Leftwich, of course, the former quarterback, Marshall, getting carried down the field by his teammates because his ankle was broken. Jacksonville Jaguars. BA's a real one. Always has been. Shouts out to a real one. Also has females on his staff. Has just been getting people who can coach into positions of coaching, and I got to applaud that. And no matter how it comes, I don't care. But I shout out because it's a unique situation and for obvious reasons. I think the biggest reason why I shout it out is kind of obvious, and if it's not, you might want to check out the stream sometime, not just the pod. Last, before we switch over to the NBA and hit some quick topics on that side, the Bears are set to lose quarterbacks coach Dave Ragone and defensive line coach Jay Rodgers. Rodgers is the bigger hit than Ragone. His work with the likes of Eddie Goldman, Bilal Nichols, Roy Robertson Harris, Nick Williams last season, Brent Urban this year, and helping Akeem Hicks along the way too, I'm sure, is going to be sorely missed as he goes on to be a defensive coordinator. Dave Ragone, however, I'm not sure exactly why. That's kind of just the only, like, what did you see from the Bears that made you think that Ragone should be your offensive coordinator in Atlanta? See, and this is why I had the concern about the Falcons before. You go with Dave Ragone and then Dean Pease. Dean Pease, I don't mind. Ragone, though? That's where you went for OC? You got the pass, you got the run game down. You gonna let Ragone? I mean, it's Arthur Smith's offense. We know that. So maybe that's where he doesn't really care. But I don't know. I don't know what you saw from the development of Mitch. And remember, you've had Ragone here for more than any of Laser, DiFilippo, any of those guys. And now while Rodgers had to leave to go fill the role with the Chargers, I just don't know exactly what it is that you're going to get from and Brandon Staley is the Chargers head coach, and I left him off the list. That's a former Bear. This is you're seeing it. The Bears kept coaches that nobody wanted, and all the coaches that people wanted are now getting jobs elsewhere. Well, except for Ragone. That's not. I haven't seen it. I'm not sure what they saw to make Ragone their offensive coordinator down there in Atlanta. But good luck to him. I hope it all works out. Brandon Staley and Jay Rodgers, they're reunited, and it feels so good. I'm going to be rooting for them low key this season because it won't be too much probably to root for on the lakefront. Switching over to the NBA real quick. Is Brooklyn Lakers, is the Nets Lakers fait accompli? Like, is that locked? Because I'm not sure it's locked. The Nets, while they have the talent, they definitely struggle with chemistry. You saw Kyrie Irving come back and break that 4-game win streak. I'm putting it all on Kyrie because that's what we've been doing. That's popular, right? That's what you're supposed to do, right? Blame Kyrie. I'm not. This is hashtag sarcasm in case you can't tell. I'm a Kyrie fan, but I do think it's funny that he comes back and they break that 4-game win streak that they had going on with him sitting on the sidelines. But what you saw against Cleveland, if Cleveland can do that, the Lakers can do that with regularity. If I maybe you step it up a notch because of the competition, but I would be concerned if I'm a Nets fan about the fact that they have these lulls. It reminds me very much of the Clippers. I see the talent is there. I see the ceiling, but I also see this floor that is far lower than anybody wants to really acknowledge because they had to part out so much to bring in a James Harden to pair with is it pair at that point? Because now it's 3, whatever, to join forces with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. You inevitably are going to lose some depth, but that depth is they're finding some role players. Bruce Brown is going to end up playing major minutes, maybe finishing games in a playoff game. That chemistry factor plays a big role, especially late in games when things are breaking down, when you're playing off script. We saw it bite the Clippers. We saw when things weren't going good, they started crumbling. The top 3 guys, at least the 2 of the top 3 guys, right, are pretty solid. Well, we'll have to separate this because Harden's really the finger pointer. Irving's just a disappearing guy, and KD's just going to be out here lashing out at people on burner accounts. Corny way to go about all that. My point is just that this could go awry really quickly if it doesn't go well really quickly. And in Irving's 8 games, the Nets are only 4-4. So again, this can go either way. I do think that the Nets are going to come out of the East, but looking at what the Lakers are doing, they're undefeated on the road this season. They just got done getting it done. Who did they play? They just got done getting it done on Thursday night. So I'm not. It might be fait accompli if they meet, but I'm not sure that that meeting's going to go how many people expect. Can it go Brooklyn's way? Hell yeah, it definitely can. I'm just not so sure that it goes that way as cleanly as they thought. I've already told you I'm tired of talking about it, and it's not because I want to ignore it and think that that's going to make it go away, but I'm no longer updating on the games being removed from COVID. They're being pushed back. Just know we're losing. They're moving games around left and right, just like the NFL had to do. It's wreaking havoc on the schedule, postponements and stuff like that. It's killing my fantasy team. Let's be real. Let's talk about the stuff that matters. I need them to stop doing this. You should have had the bubble. You did the bubble. I heard the players didn't want to do the bubble. That didn't make any sense because now look at you. It's a mess. COVID is out here wreaking havoc. It's a mess. Checking in on my MVP prediction. I had Anthony Davis as the guy who was going to go ahead and win that award. I'm not so sure that's going to happen this season, and it's not because I want to admit that. It's because Davis is averaging just 21 points and 9 boards. Now, I'm not here to say that he's not doing a very good job, but his own teammate, LeBron, is putting up 23, 7, and 7 on his own. Now, we talked about this before the season too, the cannibalization. That might take away from LeBron, but it's more than likely to take away from AD because we also know how much of a popularity award this has become. And we've had voters openly tell you that they are narrative-based voters and therefore will do so probably every time they go to the ballot. And that would include this one. And I could see if it's close, it's going to go out in LeBron's way. So I would look for there to be some jockey for position. Maybe AD picks it up. He talked about it after the game, saying that against the Milwaukee Bucks, saying that he just his shot's not there and he's not playing his best, but he's not trying to force the issue. He's just going about his business. Now that's all well and good, but at some point they're going to need him to dominate, and when that happens, maybe he can kind of make up some ground. But he's not even close to the top 10 in scoring right now. He's being outscored by guys like Christian Wood and Julius Randle. You know what I mean? Like Malcolm Brogdon. Like he's being outscored by some people he should definitely be scoring more points than. So it's probably not going to happen this year. But one guy that I do feel good about and probably undersold him was Kevin Durant out here averaging 31 points per game. Shooting 53% from the floor, 46 from 3. Okay, KD, you back, huh? 7.5 boards per game, 6 assists. Okay, KD, filling up the stat sheet. That's what I like to see. I told you my only concern about him was his health. He's back healthy. If Brooklyn, if this depth proves to be legitimate, man, and it's showing itself to be that, I'm not saying that it's completely a wash. I'm just telling you the odds are that their depth isn't going to stack up well enough with the Lakers' depth. That's my point. But if it can prove me wrong on that, man, look out, because he and Harden are going to be there. And if Kyrie just has to be, he doesn't even have to be Robin. I don't even know who it was. Did Robin have a sidekick? That's what Kyrie just has to fill in the gaps. He could be the ultimate glue guy and just get buckets. But he's got to play and got to be. And we'll see. That L coming back is funny. We'll see. Andre Iguodala heaped some lofty praise on teammates Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson. This on Robinson's podcast, saying that they had the work ethic to match the Splash Brothers. Now, again, he's just saying their work ethic matches. He didn't say they were going to be the Splash Brothers. He didn't say they could shoot better. He didn't say none of that other stuff. He said their work ethic match, and he said he admired that. I think that's one of the things that people notice when that. First of all, it's Miami. So he might be just noticing something that happens in Miami. Granted, these two dudes, well, not so much Robinson because he was on other teams, but Hero came up in this system. This is what they know. So it could just be a Miami thing, but that again is lofty praise, and I'm sure they appreciate it. Kevin Porter Jr. is off to the Houston Rockets. He went off on GM Kobe Altman with the Cleveland Cavaliers in the locker room after having his locker moved towards the lounge area with the reserves after the team acquired Taurean Prince. They gave somebody else his locker and didn't inform him, and my man's went off. Now, reports were that he was in the locker room throwing food, but a source says that was largely overblown. It was a minor incident in relation to everything else, namely the altercation with Altman, in which Alt was unable to calm Porter down. Porter now goes out to Houston with John Lucas, John Wall, Boogie Cousins, two players who have had their issues. I don't know. I don't want to. It's weird. Sounds like I'm stigmatizing them or putting a label on that I'm not trying to. But they've had things that they've had to work through, and so they could probably help him with that as well. And we know that Lucas has done that in the past. So this could work out great for Porter. Could work out really great for Houston, who's just acquiring picks and talent along the way. Christian Wood and Kevin Porter, I think, could be a really talented duo if they keep these two guys together, because everybody else is gone. Trust me on that. Lastly, the Chicago Bulls, and this will be coming out for Pippen and Easy probably Saturday probably Saturday because there's a game. But their maturation right now, I'll tell you that their record is the best they've had since the 2016-17 season. The win percentage is the best they've had since that season, and they're doing it largely by filling in the gaps and learning how to play as a team instead of just working on their individual talents. You've got guys being put in the right positions by Billy Donovan. You've got guys. Larry Markkinen has come back and has knocked the rust off. He carried the team the other night as Zach and Kobe were both struggling to shoot from the floor. Zach has stepped his game up as a defender, as a facilitator this season. This is a team that is growing. They're not there yet. I still think they're missing a piece, but they're proving me wrong every step of the way, and I would love for them to prove me wrong all the way to the playoffs, and who knows, because once you get there, anything can happen. That's the fandom. That little bit of Kool-Aid, sipped into that one. All right. That's going to do it for this episode of Triple Zeros. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at JoshGBuck. Hit up the Facebook page, Clocker Sports, website, clockersports.com, email address, clockersports@gmail.com. And, of course, you can follow the pod on Twitter and Facebook at 30spod. That's the number 3, zeros, and pod. And, of course, read the stuff. Last Word on Pro Football just released the article today trying to find silver linings in the Chicago Bears. Trying to find silver linings for the Chicago Bears after the abysmal 2021 season, or something overly dramatic in that regard. But really, there were some positive signs to look back on and bring into the future as they force these guys on at least one more season. And like I said, Pippen ain't easy. That Bulls article, Numbers Never Lie, Numbers That Count, will be coming out probably Saturday as well. And then Clocker Sports stuff, we're going to be doing a running back. The NFL's running in circles when it comes to running back contracts. And then the NBA, we're going to go with the big three versus the duo in depth. So those are a couple things to be keeping an eye out for in the coming weeks here as we wrap up the NFL season and ramp up our NBA coverage. So be sure to check this out, and every future episode, give us a like, follow, and share. And until the very next time, man, you already know what it is. I'm gone.